Welcome to People Doing Good for Others. Welcome to People Doing Good for Others, where we praise and celebrate and honor and hold in the light those who truly make significant contributions to our communities. I'm Gary York, and I'm so grateful that you're with us today. My featured guest this morning is Mr. Jim Swofford. He's a prominent businessman and several generations of doing good for others in this community. He played in the 1958 Orange Bowl when he was starting tackle at Duke University under the great coach Wallace Wade. He's owned several businesses here. He also was a prominent member of our local North Wilkesboro Rotary Club and a recent inductee into the Wilkes County Hall of Fame. So welcome to Mr. Jim Swofford, and I'm so glad you're with me this morning.
Good to be here.
And what an honor to have you. Tell us about your family moving here to start a business, and make sure we talk about your mother had a part-time job about wildflowers, if you do that.
I will. My dad was raised within walking distance of Lineberry, or excuse me, not Lineberry, but Linville Caverns.
Okay.
And that was before they commercialized. They used to play there when they were growing up. And my mother was raised, born in Mortimer, and then raised in Linville. And she had taken a job with a nursery that sold wildflowers, North Carolina wildflowers, all over the United States. She loved gardening.
Oh my.
So that's how she and Dad got together. And then later on, after high school, he took a job with Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. And at the end of the Depression, Goodyear was wanting to expand their dealer organizations, and they asked those that worked for them that they would help them start a business if they would want to go into business for themselves. And
right.
Dad picked Wilkesboro. And we moved here when I was 3 years old. So this is the only home that I've known.
Okay.
And what a great home it's been.
What a great home it's been. Wow. What a tribute to Wilkes. And tell us a little bit about starting into the Wilkes schools and even the consolidation and how we found football maybe.
Well, we were living in North Wilkesboro, and at that time it was very important whether you lived in Wilkesboro or North Wilkesboro, and never the twain shall meet, or right. So we thought. So I spent my first 8 years under the North Wilkesboro school system. And then between my 8th grade and freshman year in high school, the powers that be got together and quietly said, we'll consolidate the two schools.
That's amazing, isn't it?
For those people that weren't around then, that is extremely amazing.
Yeah.
The first year, they did not have the building complete. So you still went to school in North Wilkesboro, Wilkesboro, but they combined the sports activities and the band.
You say they quietly did it?
They did.
Wow.
Because I think otherwise it would have never gotten done.
Yeah.
And of course, after that, and people saw what could be done with consolidation, we consolidated the other high schools in the county. Because they had rivalry just like we did.
Sure.
I mean, Mountain View and Trap Hill.
Yeah.
And it just went on and on.
Tell me about Red Hoffman.
Well, at the time he was a coach at Wilkesboro, graduate of Appalachian. Red grew up in Statesville, and then his education was messed up with World War II, and he was actually a prisoner of war. And toward the latter part of the war, escaped, and it's real funny. I went to see Red a lot in later years, and he had a picture. The first thing he did when he ran into some British troops, and they've got him in a British uniform. But he was a great guy and a very, very successful high school football coach, well respected. At one time, and this was several years before he retired, we honored him at a dinner, and at that particular time, he had 76 boys to have full scholarships to college.
76. And the rest of his staff, we talked about Boyet, Tom Boyet.
Well, that was part of the deal, evidently, because Red was the head coach, and Tom Boyet had been the head coach at North Wilkesboro, he and Lot Mayberry. They were made assistant coaches. Ms. Bingham, who was band director at North Wilkesboro, took over the band. So there's a little crisscross and everything.
Sure.
And I think the most amazing thing to us was, as players, I never heard a dissatisfied word said between Coach Hoffman, Boyet, and Mayberry. They were all sold on this thing, and later on, Coach Boyet went down to Yadkinville, and I think ended up down there with head athletic director for all of the schools in Yadkin County. A lot, of course, went on into the business world later on. But we were blessed, and the consolidation was blessed by the three men that led the sports.
Wow. Jim Swofford, tell us about choosing to go to Duke.
Well, our father, Jack, who had never gone to college, but was a great Duke fan in the late 30s, and we would, after the war, we would get season tickets and go to Duke to watch ball games. Now that's part of the influence, is my father. The other influence is a girl that I dated all through high school, who was just a tad older than I am, decided she wanted to go to Duke. So it was just kind of natural that I fell into that. Plus, I'd wanted to go to Duke.
Yeah. Played in the Orange Bowl, and then graduated, and then the Marine Corps.
Went in the Marine Corps. That was back when everybody went into service.
Yeah.
And most of the players were either NROTC or ROTC at Duke. I had some knee problems in high school, and having a hard time passing the physicals. They didn't want to take a chance. And the Marine Corps had a program called PLC, Platoon Leaders Class. And you went for 2 summers, total of 6 months. And at the time that you graduated from college, you would receive a commission in the Marine Corps. Well, the Marine Corps was kind enough to let me go before a medical board. And they said, if you go through the 2 summers and everything works out and you don't have any other knee problems, we'll see that you're commissioned, which is the way it worked out.
So you became an officer in the Marine Corps?
An officer in the Marine Corps. I was the infantry officer,
Okay,
which was what I wanted to do.
right.
And it was a great experience. I consider it a privilege that they let me go into the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
Because you're working with dedicated people. Marine Corps was all volunteer. And so the people that were in there wanted it as bad as I did. And it's an experience that to this day, there's 4 or 5 couples that were classmates of mine at from various colleges, but I'm talking about at Quantico in officers training.
we were talking about Joe Macmillan a few minutes ago and recovering from a very serious accident. He's in what is it, the county group?
Yes, Marine Corps League.
Marine Corps League.
Which is made up of people that have served active time in the Marine Corps.
And you do special projects to help people in need or raise money for folks?
We do.
Scholarships, Eagle
Yes.
Scouts.
And present Eagle Scouts with flags.
Right.
And which is, you know, I guess we call them Scouts now. We don't just call them Boy Scouts.
Okay.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
That that's the proper terminology. You know, and that's a great organization.
Oh, yeah.
But we do a lot, and up until a couple of years ago, we had 4 World War II veterans that were members of the. We're down to 3 now.
Back up a minute, if you will, and talk about your wife and her name. And you said that what a blessing that's been. And
her name was Jody Swofford. Of course, Jody Swofford now, but Jody Doughton.
Jody Doughton.
Her dad worked for the Department of Transportation and was later the chief engineer here in this division.
Okay.
A great Carolina fan. Somebody said, you know, Jimmy was really emotional about when y'all got married because they saw him crying. And I said, well, he was crying because his daughter had to marry a Duke.
Oh, so y'all been together, you met in high school?
Met in high school, started dating. I was a freshman, she was a sophomore.
Oh my goodness, how wonderful.
So after 7 years of dating, we decided maybe we ought to get married. She had graduated from Duke, and I was going to graduate that year, next year. And so we got married, and she taught school, and I went to school. And then as soon as I graduated, went into, after our first child was born, went into the Marine Corps active duty.
Right. Jim, tell us about, share with us, you're a lifelong Methodist, and about starting in the church and continue today, and I want you to make sure you share with us about being a lay minister.
Well, that was something else that, you know, as a Christian, you got to look for ways to give back, because God certainly has blessed me all through my life.
Right.
And we joined the Methodist church here, lived a block away from the church when I was 3. So that's really the only church that I know. And it's been a great experience to be part of that congregation. They know all of my warts.
Yeah.
Because they practically raised me, and they know the bad times and the good times, but they still love me, and I think that's amazing, Gary. You talked about the lay. I've been doing it for 20 years, lay speaking.
Do you know that I heard about that before I met you?
Is that correct?
I did.
By someone that had walked out while I was doing
Somebody said, if the opportunity arises that you can hear him speak, and I know some folks that you've honored with at their passing, just some funerals and some eulogies, and so your lay speaking I became a big fan of Jim Swofford before we were able to shake hands.
Well, you're about to embarrass me. You
No,
realize that.
I really, people, tell us about the preparation of a sermon. Will you do that?
Well, I guess people do it different ways. Now, as a lay speaker, a lot of times they're so happy to have you because you're filling in for something.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of times they let you pick out the scripture. And I usually pick out something that I'm familiar with and comfortable with and go from there. There are a lot of, you fill in, it's very rewarding to the individual that does it. Now,
Right. Okay.
I can't speak from the other side, but I haven't had too many people walk out on me. But it's just a way for me to give back. And you run into some funny experiences. I know one was up above Lansing, and the preacher that had 3 churches broke his leg, and I filled in for him for a while. But I looked out, and I was the youngest person there, about 15 people in the congregation. And they had a printed bulletin, and it said, children's sermon. Well, I just skipped over it because there weren't any children there. And a little lady in the second row, about 85, started waving her hand, and I said, yes, ma'am. She said, you didn't do the children's sermon. And I said, well, I didn't see any children. She said, we'd like to hear it anyway. So
oh, my goodness.
You have to learn to just let things go sometimes,
Yeah.
But it's been very enjoyable, and I hope it's been enjoyable for the people.
So you pick a topic that you're familiar with it.
Well, a piece of scripture, and
Okay.
try to build a sermon around that. And I'm a great believer in talking about something that you know something about.
Yeah, been there.
Been there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important.
And you also teach Sunday school. Tell us about your class.
Well, we're made up, I guess, it's a men's Bible class, and we ought to call it the old men's Bible class because these younger fellows like to go to Sunday school with their wives. I can't understand that. Jody has her class, and we have our class. But it came down to we used to, you take it a month at a time, and then people kept leaving, or through death or through moving. And then we got down to there's about 3 or 4 of us taking 4 or 5 months at a time. And then we ran out of those. And they said, well, Jim, how about you just becoming the teacher? So that's
Good.
I do it every Sunday.
Yeah, I first met you through the Wilkesboro group, and Robert Rosati and the Methodist men, and maybe John Garwood, if I remember.
A great friend of mine.
Didn't you do part of his service too?
Yes.
Yes. So those good things we do will kind of out in the communities, people know about it, and your good name would always come up about the lay and the Methodist church. The academic side of Duke, talk about you became you had to be a good student to do that.
Well, I had my whole elementary and high school education through the Wilkes Schools here. And I'm a firm believer in public school
Yep.
To me, you know, school, you learn a lot more than just in the books.
Yeah.
You learn how to get along with people. You
Right.
learn that everyone isn't like you, which is very important that you learn that.
Yeah.
And you learn how to get along with them, and you learn how to respect them. And in some cases, love them, and it's hard to love some. But it's something that we've never give credit to the public schools about, but that's the greatest part of that education.
Yeah.
So I was extremely lucky to have some of the great teachers I had. My wife's a teacher. I've got a daughter that's a teacher. And I have a lot of respect for public school teachers.
A lot of the folks that are guests and people doing good for others are, Dr. Wesley Wood will be here in a little while, and he's the Human Resources Director for the county schools, and I'm a huge fan.
Well, and they do a remarkable job.
Yeah.
Under trying circumstances a lot of times.
Your business career, let's touch on that.
Well, one of these days I'm gonna find out what I was supposed to do with my life. My father died when he was 51. I was in the Marine Corps. My older brother Carl who graduated from Davidson and gone into the Army, but he was out. He was 4 years older than I am. So he and Dad worked together some. And then Dad passed away at 51. That was in 1962. And Carl kind of held the business together, he and Mom, who's a remarkable individual. I mean, my two younger brothers. Bill was a senior in high school, and Johnny was in the 8th grade at the time. So she ran the business, was a single parent.
Really?
For 2 teenage boys. And she and Carl held everything together, not for me, because I had to learn it when I came out. Up until that time, my experience with the tire business was changing them. And there's a lot more to it than just that.
More to it than that. So you were in the food business for a long time.
Well, when Jody and I were stationed at, and I say we were stationed because if you're married, you know, you got to give credit to a lot of these service families.
Sure. Because
even though the husband may be deployed, that means the mom is looking after everything back here.
Right.
But these places called Hardee's kept building in these eastern towns that we'd drive through going back and forth to Camp Lejeune. So that'd been in the back of my mind. And later on, we progressed, and finally we said, let's take a real close look at this Hardee's. And by that time, North Carolina was gone. The only thing open was West Virginia.
to build stores.
To build stores. So we went down and got the franchise for part of West Virginia. And that's how we started in the Hardee's business. And West Virginia was very good to us. I learned more about West Virginia than I ever thought I would.
Yeah.
We had the southern, what at the time they were running wide open, the southern coal fields.
Coal fields. Wow.
And we ended up, we had, the most we ever had was 40. And we had stores in North Carolina, West Virginia, Kentucky, and South Carolina. But great organization.
Good. Jim Swofford, let's talk about the Rotary Club.
Well, that's another joy of my life is, and we were raised to give back. And the Rotary Club here is just full of service to the community and the individuals in the community. And besides having a great group of guys that we enjoy, and ladies that we enjoy serving with as far as the civic organization is concerned.
You talked about chicken queue, and you shared with me how important that is, foster children at Christmas program at your Rotary Club.
The chicken queue is one of the things that we do to raise money. And we were extremely lucky in that we have a member, Gerald Langford, who, and I think Gerald's the only one that said this, but he's supposed to be the best barbecue chickener in Wilkes County. And we all laugh because every time we have it, Gerald will get up and say, when they report how much money we've made, that he believed that this was the best chicken we ever did.
Every year?
Every year.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure we recognize our sponsors, which is Wilkes Communications and Wilkes, the network, and also WIFM and the RiverStreet group that helps us here along the way. I was just so overwhelmed maybe with our last Wilkes County Hall of Fame, and you were an important member, was inducted into that. And you talked about the gratitude of having the Wilkes County experience and what that it's touched you in countless ways. So Jim Swofford, tell us about the Hall of Fame and being there and 400 people, and what a just an exhilarating experience to know that you're part of this really wonderful group of men and women.
Well, it meant a lot to me, and I think it does to everybody, to be so named. Now, whether or not I'm deserving, I'm going to let other people.
Sure.
But it was a humbling experience.
Yeah. And
you spoke of Wilkes and everything. I use the term Mother Wilkes because it does take a village.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten away from that a little bit. We don't recognize it enough.
Right.
But the good things that I have in my life have come about because I lived in Wilkes County. I played ball under Coach Hoffman. I married a girl I met going through the public school system. I had great teachers that prepared me not only for Duke, but also for life.
Wow.
So I owe a lot to Mother Wilkes.
You spoke about when you would come up, was it 115?
115.
Coming back and forth when you would leave and come back from Statesville. That great feeling of knowing that how you've been blessed.
Well, I just that night I got kind of emotional, I guess, and that wasn't the first time I thought that way. But at that time, if you were going east or south, you used 115.
Right.
And you might cut through the east, going to Marksville, and then Lexington, then over to 70.
Yeah.
But coming back, if you come down and go across Hunting Creek, there's two small mountain ranges. And to me, it was just like as you cut back west going toward the Wilkesboro, it was just like your grandma standing on the front porch with her arms open waiting to hug you.
Wow.
And so that's the way every time when I returned after I graduated from Duke, after I came home after the Marine Corps, that's the way the route that I took, and that's the way it felt.
Yeah. Mother Wilkes.
Mother Wilkes.
Make sure that before we're close to the end, and I want you to, you have had three brothers and lost one, and your children, make sure, name those wonderful people for us before we finish.
Well, Carl and I used to, Carl's 4 years older than I am. Then Bill came along, he's 7 years younger than I. And Johnny's 4 years younger than Bill was.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, a lot of people know him as Oliver, the
mm-hmm.
singer.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, John is the ACC commissioner.
Yep.
And Carl and I used to joke, and probably half of it isn't a joke, is that Mom and Dad were so disappointed in us that they decided to raise another family. But
and your children?
My children are Todd, Heather, and Mark.
Okay.
And Mark is finishing up his Army career. He's a colonel and is going to be living in San Antonio. Todd works for me, and Heather teaches school.
Okay. Jim Swofford has been our featured guest today, and what an honor to have him with us, sharing his experience and his hope and his gratitude for Wilkes County. I'm Gary York, and this has been People Doing Good for Others. And please tell your friends about our show. Be a part of it, and in a special way that we know that Mr. Swofford is one who seeks and finds ways to serve God, family, friends, and worthy causes, and has honored us in a special way today. God bless you, friend.
Thank you for having me.
I hope
Gary.
you'll come
God
again.
Bless you and your work.
Thank you very much.